Hi all, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Karen Basarab with the Center for a Livable Future, and in the room with me is Rachel Santo. Also in the room are two research assistants that are with us this summer. There's Kayla Jones and Jennifer White. They're working with the Food Policy Networks project this summer, and so we thought it'd be good for them to kind of listen in on the call and hear what's happening with state policy. Before we get started, we wanted to just do kind of a round of introductions. If you'll just tell us your name, the organization you're with, and the state you're located in. And we'll start with Jody.
Hi, my name is Jody Ellett. I'm assuming you can hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm in Indiana. I'm at Indiana University, and I convene sort of what we're trying to form is an Indiana Food Council network.
John Bushman, you are muted, John.
Mute. Oh.
You're good.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, John Bushman. I'm based in Miami at Florida International University and a board member with the Florida Food Policy Council.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting.
Margaret Reed.
Hi, I'm Margaret Reed. I'm the Policy Committee Chair for the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. And our network director might, if she's not on the call already, Nessa Richmond will be joining us too.
Great. Welcome. Noelle.
Hey there, I'm Noelle Harden. I'm with University of Minnesota Extension, and I am involved with the Minnesota Food Charter Network.
Welcome. Amelie.
Hello, Amelie Lipstrew. I'm with the Ohio Ecological Food and Farm Association, and I'm on the steering committee of the Ohio Food Policy Network.
Thank you. Dawn.
Hi, this is Dawn Anthony from I have been the couple for about 6 years.
Great, thank you. Stephanie Henry.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Stephanie Henry from the Food Council of Northeast Indiana. I see Jody's on here too, so I'll probably let her do most of the talking.
Thank you. Martin Richards. Eddie Oliver.
Hi, this is Eddie. I am new to the Virginia Food Systems Council. Been on there about a year now, and I chair the Policy and Advocacy Committee for the group.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Anne Palmer.
Hi, this is Anne Palmer. I work with Karen and Rachel, and I'm dialing in from Anchorage, where I am going to be getting ready to attend a conference.
Glad you could join us.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, I'm going to go to the phones now. Someone dialing in from an 860-713-2543 number.
That's me, Erin Wyndham with the Connecticut Department of Agriculture, and I am sitting in for Stephen Anderson, who heads up our Food Policy Council.
Glad you could join us.
Thank you.
Let's see. There's a 260-710-1757.
There were two people who told me they'd be driving and would be on mute the whole time, so it could be one of those two.
Okay. Let's see, I'm going to go back to Martin Richards. You were on mute. We couldn't hear you. And we still can't hear you. So I'm going to come back to you again, and there might be an issue with your connecting with your phone. There's a 517-420-3249 number. I thought I read 2 something. 804-521-2500. Um, 859-351-4508. All right, I'm gonna do, and then there's finally 919-923-4061. Folks on the phone, is there anyone that I missed that hasn't had a chance to introduce themselves?
Well, this is Peter Ruddick from the California Food Policy Council. I switched to Zoom just as you switched to phones, so I got caught in between. I'm here.
Great, thanks, Peter. All right. We've got a great representation. Thank you all for joining us. For those of you that this is your first call or haven't been on one of the calls with our state councils before, the state group, we loosely try to convene this group once a quarter for just a discussion around different topics that are brought up to us by this group that are of interest. And one of the things that we thought that we heard some interest and feedback on was around state legislation and wanting to know what's happening across states. And so we thought today we would focus this conversation around state legislation. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, who's going to kind of the next part of the discussion.
Great. So we're going to kind of take today in talking about state legislation in 2 directions. So we're going to have you all go around and give updates on some interesting or exciting things that have happened in the past year with your state legislative session. And Karen's going to share a slide of some key things that we would want you to say in your brief update. We're going to give about 3 minutes per participant, so we have to keep these brief because we have 16 people on the call. But if you could give us some key highlights, like bills that you were particularly excited about, whether or not they did or didn't pass, any anomalies or interesting things that happened during the session, and if you tried something new or would like to share some takeaways. We want to keep it less of a just iterative, like this is what we passed or didn't pass, but more kind of synthesizing or just bringing out highlights from your experience and your perspective that other states would learn from. And then as you're doing that, if you could also share, Karen and Anne started collecting resources a couple months ago about legislative efforts and across states on different food system issues. And we have a list right now. It could be more robust and we could do more research, but we kind of wanted to get your opinion about what would be useful to you. So are there certain areas of the food system or the food supply chain that you think would be interesting to see what other states are doing? There's a lot of databases that already exist out there, so we don't want to duplicate efforts. But is there some resource that you've been looking for that you think would be particularly useful in this arena? And if so, would you mind sharing that during your update? So with that, we can kind of start naming people. There's a few people who have to get off early or who are just participating by phone. So Laura Yelton, I think she is the only one. I don't think I heard anyone from Michigan unless you did when they were introducing themselves. But Laura gave an update that in Michigan, they are still working to update the 10 cents a meal pilot project, which supports schools in purchasing locally grown fruits, vegetables, and dry beans. And really hoping that it will be expanded statewide this year and see an increase in funding. But they're waiting on the final word as budgets are being worked out. She sent some more information about that, and I can include that in a follow-up email. But that was the update from Michigan. And Dawn from Colorado has to get off early, so maybe we can start with you giving your update.
Thanks. Yeah, we were really happy we got 2 bills through this year. And so I have good news on that. And both of them had been in development a while. The first is our Colorado House Bill 1132, which is going to give school incentives to use Colorado food and producers for more procurement, and basically going to act like a mini grant program where schools can apply to be a part of that program and then get reimbursed And the other two key aspects of that are it isn't just fruits and vegetables, it's any local foods. It didn't get fully funded. It got 168,000 of the $500,000 they were asking for, and unfortunately cut out its evaluation and assessment. So we're trying to figure out how we can do that for them out of CSU. But it's still a great win. And the other clever thing I think they did is they are going to prioritize the not big school districts and really try to target it to limited resource school districts that it's been a little harder to be as active with farm school. And then the other one we're going to benefit directly from at CSU because we have been doing our Food Systems Advisory Council as a volunteer staffing situation since Libwell handed it over. But two things in our new House Bill 1202. First, we merged our Colorado Farm to School Task Force and our Food Systems Advisory Council into one unit. And then they were able, some of our advocates, to secure a staff person for that. So we can do a little even more than we feel like we've done well going forward. And we're going to house that person at Colorado State University and be looking in the next few weeks for the advertisement for that position that we hope to hire and have on the ground this fall. Do you want us then to like send you, so when you're saying you're compiling these, do you want us to send you these things from states, or is that not part of the update?
So we already kind of did gather some of the updates from states. We can continue gathering them if that seems.
Yeah, we started a folder in a shared Google Drive, and I'll chat the link to everyone, that contains descriptions or summary briefs about legislation in states that either they're trying to pass or has been passed. So if there's any information, Dawn, that you have that you want us to include in that folder, we can put it in there.
Will do. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you. Will you share the announcement for the position with this list once it comes available?
Yes, I'll share with this list, and in our promotional plan, we're sending it to a bunch of places. So forgive me if you see it 8 times and get annoyed by me by the end of it.
Sounds great. Thank you.
We can just go down the list. Next would be Erin in Connecticut.
Okay, not a lot of updates. So we did propose one bill that unfortunately didn't pass. That would increase membership in our Connecticut Food Policy Council. We also wanted to link the economic development, environmental protection and preservation with farming and urban issues, and also look at food and nutrition programs as they relate to food policy. Like I say, that didn't pass, unfortunately. In general, we do have a lot of good legislation coming out with Farm to School. Trying to increase Connecticut grown into our school systems, institutions, that sort of thing. And the other thing in legislation was that our budget passed increasing availability of funds to look at the amount of Connecticut grown that's going in, continue our senior programs, and continue other programs that pertain to food policy. So that is my brief update.
Again. Great, thank you, Erin. John Bushman.
Hello, I'm going to save you about 2.5 minutes or more because I'm not the person on our council that deals with this area. So I'm afraid I am not, and I wasn't, I sort of joined us at the last minute because our chair is at a convening up in Jacksonville today and was unable to be in 2 places at once. So I do apologize. I did not, was not aware that this was going to be the topic. I would have prepared myself adequately.
No worries at all. Thanks, John. Oh, go. No worries at all. Thanks, John. Peter?
Yes, thank you. No, that's it. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Peter would be next. Peter Ruddock in California.
Peter, you're on mute if you're talking.
I am not on mute. I do have a poor connection. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I'm I'm going to trust that I'm getting through here.
You are.
I mentioned 2 bills. We had a bill sponsored by NRDC that we were very excited about, the Organic to School pilot program. They put it in as a pilot program because they knew that the state would not fund 10 cents per meal for organic for the entire state. It still died in the Appropriations Committee, the committee where things go to die, which I assume is true in a lot of states. It's very true in California. And so we were disappointed about that. It's something we talk about again and again, how to get a better handle on and deal with the Appropriations Committee. We are also following the Homemade Food Operations Act, which passed last year unanimously without the support of the health department over the objections of parts of the health department, who put a cleanup bill in for this year, which we expect the governor to sign in July. The way the bills have been put forward is each county has to opt in, which is going to be a massive effort over the next couple of years. I would say to anybody, if somebody puts county opt-in at you, resist it with all your might. It's an order of magnitude extra work. We are working, a group of us, not the Food Policy Council, but one of our members is looking to bring this bill to other states, and we have interest from Washington State to do this next. So hopefully home cooked food sales will become legal across the US over the years.
Great, thank you so much, Peter. And that's really interesting about the county opt-in. I've not heard of that often, but maybe I'm just not as.
So their Agricultural Incentive Act is the same way.
We had it happen with one other bill, which was an urban ag incentives bill.
Yeah.
And very few counties have opted in.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating, and having gone through it now twice, I would say whatever you can do to resist it.
Is it being added on as an opt-in by legislators, or is it added on by the groups that are proposing the legislation?
I'm sorry, that one broke a little bit. Can you ask me again?
Is the opt-in option being added by legislators, or is it kind of introduced with the bill by groups that are advocating for it?
It tends to be by a legislator. The legislator from Mendocino County heard from his county supervisors that they couldn't afford to implement such a law. And so he was going to kill it in appropriations if the opt-in wasn't added to it. And so the author accepted that as an amendment. The funny thing is, his county will probably opt in the first half of the counties, whereas a few other counties that have very nervous health department officials are using it as an excuse not to opt in.
Interesting. Well, glad it passed. Sorry it has that add to it.
Next would be, I guess, Martin Richards, who is with us from the Community Farm Alliance in Kentucky. He thinks his audio is working now, so we can check in with Martin.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Yes, I'm not known for my tech abilities. So Martin Richards, I'm the Executive Director of Community Farm Alliance. We are a grassroots-based membership organization operating in Kentucky for the past 34 years. This past session, we got some tweaks to the cottage food laws in Kentucky. They are really needing an overhaul, but we got some tweaks to that. We also got, sort of related, we got legislation passed that will require water bottle filling stations in all new schools. So one small step forward to a water first program. And then I see on the PowerPoint in the Google Docs, Yes, we are in the beginnings of launching our legislative campaign for the Healthy Farm and Food Incentive Fund. So like other states, New Mexico for one, we will be pushing for legislation that creates state funding that then can be used as match for, GusNIP and so forth. And that builds off, our 5 years of incentive programs that we call Kentucky Double Dollars that are matching SNAP and WIC Senior Farmers Market programs, SNAP, WIC, and seniors for that. And I think we have one advantage as far as that goes is we're not pursuing general funding. In Kentucky, we have taken the Master Tobacco Settlement Funds, which is like $3.5 billion over 25 years, and have dedicated those funds to improving Kentuckians' health and diversifying agriculture. So we're looking to set aside somewhere and that's about $100 million a year that comes in from tobacco settlement funds. And so we're looking for a set aside of 1% to 2% per year of that that can then be used for these various programs, whether it's double dollars or, we have sponsored a number of Veggie RX programs, walking programs. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Great. And you said that you'll be kind of pushing through the double dollar program next year. Is that right?
No, we have been operating a double dollar program for 5 years. This is legislation that will really, and ag development funds have been supporting that. This legislation really kind of codified those approaches and providing, a stable source of match, right? We had trouble with our initial match for our Finney application, and consequently we're using in kind for that. And consequently, we created a Kentucky Double Dollar Advisory Council, which is kind of acting these days as a de facto food policy council. It's nonprofits, some community foundations, and a number of state agencies is on that. So anyway, just having set aside monies that can then be tapped for future GusNIP applications is really, really important.
Great. Thank you. We look forward to hearing an update next year then on that one.
Eddie, I think you're next in the list. It keeps getting scrambled up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Eddie with the Virginia Food Systems Council, and as a group, we're just kind of getting our legs under us, but there's a lot of activity in this space in Virginia. So I'd say the main push statewide has been a healthy food financing bill called the Virginia Grocery Investment Fund to create a state pool to incentivize retailers to move into food deserts. We've been at it 4 years now and have not been able to break through, have gotten some bipartisan coalitions in the House and Senate. There have just been some leadership obstacles we haven't been able to get through. So reassessing, I think it's on the priority list moving forward, but may not have quite the same resources behind it. Otherwise, nothing specific, but we do have a fresh match program that will probably be looking for funds, state funds, to support. The First Lady has a farm to school spending goal that we might be putting some financial resources behind. And of course, there's a lot of energy in Virginia on child nutrition programs, school breakfast expansion, et cetera. And that a few years ago, we passed a food crop donation tax credit for growers who give to food banks. It has not been terribly successful, just low uptake. And so we're looking at ways we can restructure that funding so that it's a little bit more of a pass-through appropriation for the food banks to spend on locally grown foods as opposed to being a tax credit. So that's a very brief overview of the landscape, but happy to be plugged into this group and looking forward to learning from others.
Eddie, do you know why there's low uptake of the tax credit?
So the food banks are issuing about $60,000 a year in tax credits, but only $10,000 to $15,000 per year actually being claimed by the growers, which indicates to us that the hassle, the burden of submitting for the paperwork just isn't worth it to them. The obstacle of paying the overhead costs of the labor and the freight and everything else that comes with getting the food out of the ground into the food banks, that's a much higher hurdle than the actual tax credit itself. And that's something we've been investing in for the State Food Bank Association. And we probably wouldn't be leveraging any of the tax credit if it wasn't for that overhead cost that we've been paying.
And what is the tax credit again? How much per farm?
So it's capped at $5,000 per year per grower, and it's 30% of fair market value.
Thank you. Thank you for the update.
Emily in Ohio.
Hello, everybody. First, I'll say a little disclaimer, which is that the Ohio Food Policy Network, probably not unlike many of the people on the call today, has not been staffed. It's a volunteer effort and there's absolutely no funding. And until very recently, we really didn't have formal bylaws and a structure to adopt formal policy positions. That being said, we did recently elect some officers of a steering committee. We do have some bylaws and did do some outreach and diversification of the network. So even with not having the ability to adopt formal policy positions, there are several member entities of the network that did advance important policy goals that were supported by most of the folks in the network. The first being state dollars for the Finney program, which has been mentioned already. Our Ohio legislature operates on a 2-year cycle, so this 133rd session includes both 2019 and 2020. They are finishing up the 2-year biennium budget this week, actually, and the state commitment to the Finney program, which is administered in Ohio through the Produce Perks Midwest initiative, has made it in the Senate version of our budget bill, and it's in conference committee as we speak, so we'll probably know by the end of the week if that is formally adopted into the state budget. One thing that was not a legislative but a state policy piece was a goal to get staff people both at the Ohio Department of Agriculture and the Ohio Department of Education dedicated to farm to school work. We do have a new staff person that got designated at our Department of Ag to work on farm to school. There isn't a new person at our education department, but I think there's a renewed commitment to engage in farm to school there. And a third policy initiative that's been spearheaded by OFA, which is my organization, and supported by the network, is based on legislation that passed in Minnesota about 1.5 years ago, and that is a land transfer credit that offers tax credits to landowners that transition farmland or other agricultural assets to beginning farmers. That's been introduced in the House Ag Committee, and because of all of the work on the budget has taken a little bit of a back seat, but because we're a 2-year session, we'll still have time. We have sponsors lined up in the Senate, and we're looking to try and advance that when the legislature reconvenes in the fall. And the final piece that I would add is that, you know, we did elect a new governor last year that's got a strong commitment to children's health. So we think we've got some opportunities to have conversations with the governor's office and see what can be done on the administrative level as well on some of the initiatives, and that's the update from Ohio.
Thanks, Emily. Always forget to turn off mute on our side of things. Let's see, Jody.
Okay, I do know there's been a long-term effort for healthy food financing in Indiana, and it had been funded and supported by the Indiana chapter of the American Heart Association. That effort finished last year in June, and a few of our legislators introduced healthy food financing bills. They were not even heard in Indiana. For our efforts moving forward, we had a lot of discussion last week. We have a group from our Food Council network working on an Indiana food charter. And so quite a number of discussions around, is this a useful tool for legislators? Is this a useful tool for, policy building for elected officials, or do we need to spend some time raising awareness and building a network of affiliated partner organizations to start all speaking the same food language? So a lot of interesting discussions arose around that, and pretty exciting. And here at IU, we're also hiring someone in the School of Policy and Environmental Affairs, a faculty position for next fall, I believe. And Julia is actually trying to put in a grant to study those beginning farmer tax credits, land transfer tax credits. So she's been working with Amelie, I think.
Great, thank you so much, Jody. Great to see this land tax credits picking up speed. All right, let's see. Margaret Reed.
Hi, I was on mute. So I'm from the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. So regarding the questions, we did have a lot of new things this year because the council got more involved for the first time with policy. So first and foremost, and I'm gonna copy and paste some links over into the group chat. But first and foremost, we rebranded and had and got a new website. And so on that is our first ever bill tracker. So that is something that was produced for the first time for the state of Rhode Island. And the way we did our bill tracker was not only posting it on our website, but we broke it up into sections that map on to the state's food plan. So you'll see when you look at that, those is why that's why we have the categories that we do across the food sector. In addition, on that page is our policy priorities, which was also it was the first time for the council to have a platform on these priorities. And in regards to any specific bills, I would say that the LASA program, which we have a page on that I will also include, was really the only thing specifically that was targeted. It's one of our signature programs, and what we do, the council does every year, is at a minimum is fighting for maintaining the program, and of course, like many things, always asking for more funding in regards to that. But the council is also heavily involved with that program in terms of, it's a mini grant program, and I'm sorry, the LASA stands for the Local Ag and Seafood Act. And so the council acts as the group that gives out the mini grants and runs that program. There was also some focus on food waste in regards to, broadly speaking, in regards to several different bills, but it was nothing really was super targeted in terms of a specific bill. So that was kind of, like I said, it was a lot of new things, and it's the council's first time to really get more involved with the legislative session. So I'm pretty proud as the policy committee chair, pretty proud of the work that we have done so far, but obviously there's a lot more for us to learn.
Great, thank you so much, Margaret. It's great to hear you guys got off to a great start on working on more specific policies.
Yeah.
Noelle, I know we've talked to you before. I don't think we've had your update yet.
Yeah, that's right. Hi again, everyone. So the first big thing that happened in Minnesota, we're kind of unique because we have a split legislature between the two parties, which I believe that we're the only state that has that. So we had a fun time working through that this year. But one of the things, the most important thing is not just related to food, but we had a healthcare provider tax that was supposed to sunset this year, and we were able to repeal the sunset of that tax. And that's important to the food world because that funds, among other things, our statewide health improvement program, which supports a number of things related to food access, gardening, community gardens, things like that. So that was really great news. There also is support for food networks and coalitions provided through that as well, and pretty important for this group in particular. So then we also had two other policy victories this year. We had a farm to school bill that passed, so that created a marketing type position that is not just farm to school, but it includes farm to school in the kind of mix of programs and markets that that person will be working on. And then it also provides $400,000 for our farm to school grants, which we've had in the past. But what's really exciting about this year is that they will, for the first time ever, allow for purchase reimbursements for the schools to buy from farmers. So we have not had that in the past, and it's been more like for equipment and things like that that the schools need, but not much kind of financial benefit to growers. So we're excited to see that shift a bit. And then lastly, our healthy food financing, our good food access program received the $300,000 in funds that was requested to pay for more grants. So we are pretty happy that we had a pretty good year despite having a split government in Minnesota.
Great, thanks so much. And I just got an email from Megan. I think she might have been trying to talk to introduce it. She was on. I don't know. Okay, that's fine. Oh, 650-280-0978.
650 is Peter. I had to switch back to the phone. My connection was so bad.
Okay. Okay, no worries, Peter. We'll continue on. Audrey Hess, I saw that she joined us somewhere since we first started the introductions. Audrey, do you want to go? We're just giving a brief introduction or brief overview of some key updates that have happened in your state legislative session this year. Interesting things or surprises, tips that you have for other states.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one exciting thing in PA has been the Pennsylvania Farm Bill that's got a lot of different pieces. For me in the Division of Food and Nutrition and Department of Ed, I'm particularly excited about the farm to school piece, which would provide some funding for early care and education through grade 5 for food and ag education and different farm to school kinds of activities. But there are a lot of other pieces to this PA Farm Bill, urban ag, and promoting different sectors of ag. But it's sort of been broken up into separate bills, and different ones are at different stages along the process. but things are looking pretty positive. It'll remain to be seen what all gets funded out of the different pieces. So that's what I would add from PA. Also, we're working with our development of our state council to try to move it along baby steps towards some kind of formation.
Thanks, Audrey. Stephanie Henry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Jody pretty much gave our update because I'm in Indiana as well. So like she said, we've had some bills that were introduced. They didn't really go too far. And we're looking at how the products, the materials that we're working on can help inform the next couple of sessions. So yeah, loving hearing everybody else's update though.
Great, thank you so much, Stephanie. So I'm gonna unmute the phone people to see if one's Megan. Yeah, we also tried Lily. Oh, Lily Shapiro. Oh.
Hi, everybody. I just wrote something in the comment box. I'm based at the University of Michigan, and so I'm connected. I work as an evaluator for the Michigan Local Food Council Network, so I'm connected to that work statewide, although I'm really not the person who should be giving the overview. I don't know if either Megan or Liz Gensler's on the call, but if they haven't given an update yet, they would be the best folks for that.
I don't think either of them are on the call. Lori Yelton had written in, and we gave a brief summary of, she mostly talked about the 10 cents a meal pilot project that was going on in Michigan.
Great. Well, then I'll just say that Michigan does have a robust statewide local food council network, but I'll leave it to others to speak for the group.
Great. Thanks, Lily. We are trying to unmute.
All right, Megan, you should be unmuted.
Thank you. Did anybody else from Colorado speak? I just got on late. So let me know if I'm the only Colorado person on. Do you know?
Don Tillamy gave an update on some of the legislation.
Oh, good. Well, I'm sure Don covered it. The Cost Act Farm to School Task Force coming to CSU, right? And then the pilot for the Farm to School.
Yes.
Did she? Okay, good. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to know about legislative session, or if she brought up any of the other bills.
Those were the two main bills that she highlighted.
Yes, big wins. And we worked on some climate and some water stuff also. We had a really good legislative session. It was just all rainbows and unicorns with our new legislative body. So much so that we didn't get all our bills through, but that was a good thing, right? We're really excited about our policy climate, and we're looking forward to doing the work, keeping it moving.
We're excited for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna try unmuting the other people on the phone one more time to make sure that we are not skipping any of you in case you're muted via our system. So first we'll try the 240-838-1020 number. Okay, next we'll try the 517-420-3249. And then we'll try the 919-923-4061.
Yeah, it's Maureen Best with Virginia Food System Council, and Eddie already gave our update.
Great.
Perfect.
Thanks for joining us, Maureen.
Is there anyone else that we did not get the overview, your updates there that we skipped?
This is Nessa Richmond. Margaret Reed gave a great update for the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. I would just add that if you visit the new website, it's set up as a dashboard to measure the implementation of our state's food strategy along several key metrics. So that's something that came online just in April. And also that in the past year, we've taken on a number of implementation projects that will reflect, I think, back on policy. that are part of our state's food strategy. In particular, we have a capital access project where we're working to leverage bond and tax increment finance funding from our development finance agencies to build a key piece of food system infrastructure, which is related to our seafood processing in the state. So there's more information on the website.
Great, thank you so much, Nessa. I'm excited to check out this dashboard website. Yeah, sure. We can open it up for questions if people want to discuss, if you have any questions from other people's updates. And if not, we can jump into.
Thank you all for your updates. Did anyone have any kind of interesting things that happened during their legislative sessions, or any kind of anomalies, cautionary tales, or anything that you'd like to share? We know that there were some exciting shifts in administration in Colorado and New Mexico that helped to push some legislation through in both of those states.
This is Megan. I will say that we had some of the interesting pushback we got were some of the legislative body choosing to read out entire bills to stall the process so that we didn't get to second reading by the end of session on some of our bills. And that created some interesting theatrics. Also, some frustrated legislators. So I thought that was just kind of, you know, working in the field, it was interesting to see the pushback. And also, I felt like the way that our governor and his cabinet handled the way they were going to fund projects was really interesting too. So we all had to shift gears collectively. I think we did a really good job. But it was really interesting to see the way that pushback happened in our state with those pretty dramatic shifts in leadership.
Sounds like it was good television watching. Good reality TV.
Indeed.
So this is Emily from Ohio. I have a question. I've been really intrigued by what's happening in Pennsylvania with this PA Farm Bill. I'd be interested to learn kind of what the origin of that was, and you know, what kind of coalitions or partners were key in moving that forward.
I wish I would have more answers for you. In the Department of Education and part of the Pennsylvania Farm to School Network, I was, you know, one of many people curious to hear details as it came out, but it was from the Department of Agriculture, and it was months until any more details than a one-pager were really made available. So I really don't know a whole lot about the development of it, other than it came out of the Department of Agriculture. And some pieces of it name other agencies as supporting. You know, Department of Health, for example, is named as supporting agency in some of the pieces of it. But I'm curious as time unfolds to learn more about the background of it too.
Unmute. Please do share those when you get them.
This is Megan. We're looking to do a resolution like that also. And didn't you guys pass like a resolution? So we want to do one in Colorado, and we'd love to see if you guys have resolutions, what language you have in those for Colorado.
Megan, what type of resolution? You got the first part of your sentence got cut off.
Oh, sorry. Full disclosure, I'm at the beach watching my kid. my reception's probably garbage. We want to do an agriculture resolution, much like what Pennsylvania calls their own farm bill, right? We want to have overarching guiding principles that we pass as a resolution to guide future legislation for the legislative body moving forward for the state of Colorado. And right now, the COSPAN is working on it, the Colorado Food Policy Network, so Wendy and the team there.
Noel, do you know if Minnesota passed something similar?
You know, to my knowledge, we don't have something like that in the legislature, but I could totally be mistaken. I am not the most wonkiest of the policy nerds in Minnesota. But what we do have is a Minnesota charter, which is a document, several pages, 99 strategies for changing the food system. That went through and was approved by, I think, 3 of our state agencies, but never actually went through the legislature. And I think that could potentially be one of its shortcomings, and the fact that it's 99 strategies and doesn't present a clear, unified vision for the state. So we're kind of in the midst of a transition within our Minnesota Food Charter network and thinking about, you know, what might be the Food Charter 2.0, or something that has a little bit more, maybe not teeth is the right word, but more of that credibility that something that's gone through the legislature might.
Thank you. I know I saw pass through some announcement that New York had a farm bill that they were working on too. So it's an interesting concept, moving these farm bills at the state level. So this is kind of leading us down a path of some questions that we had in terms of how to track state legislation related to food systems. We had sent out a request to this list back in March, asking for information about legislation that was being passed related to healthy food access or incentives. And you all were really wonderful in sending us information on what your states were looking at. And we compiled that into a PowerPoint, and then also created this Google Drive that has information that was shared with us so we can share that back to you. But it seemed like there was some interest from folks in terms of understanding what other states are doing. And so we're trying to figure out kind of what's the best way to share kind of what's happening with state legislation around food systems. We know already that like Farm to School does a great job of tracking legislation related to farm to school. There's a database that American Farmland Trust holds that has legislation from all 50 states around farmland preservation. There's a Policy Link has a database of legislation on healthy food financing. So what we're trying to kind of figure out is what's the best mechanism or way or ideas of sharing information that would be of interest to this network or group. We might be able to share it to the larger food policy networks as well. Kind of what do you want to know? What are you unable to, information you're able to get? Are kind of calls like this enough to hear updates from other states? Is there other interests that you would be interested in learning about? So we just wanted to hear your ideas and thoughts. What would be most useful for you, if anything? If not, kind of what's your interest?
This is Nessa. I think Margaret mentioned this already, but this year we last year we piloted, and then this year we implemented for the full legislative session a bill tracker. This bill tracker is updated live, so it's a live feed. We get the information from a secondary source, and then we're able to pick out which bills are related to the food system. And then we have categorized those by the 5 integrated focus areas that are laid out in our food strategy. So that is on our webpage under policy, built, and then the selection is bill tracker, and it's literally updated live on a daily basis. And then in addition to that, we do a summary of hearings for that week, again divided out by the 5 integrated focus areas. on a weekly basis that we post on Facebook. So I bring that up because it might provide some, idea about ways that the group might be able to share.
That's great, Nessa. And that's a great resource for timely information about what's happening with the legislative session. We also know that West Virginia has some form of a bill tracker that's online and publicly available as well. Are there other states that are on this call that have some sort of a bill tracker, an online bill tracker?
We do.
In Colorado?
Yeah.
California's is not in real time in a way that the public could access. The Food Policy Council keeps it up on our internal website as best we can. We publish it to the world at the end of the year.
Thanks, Peter. So would sharing kind of links to individual state trackers be helpful?
I'm curious as to how the state tracker live feed works. Like, is it something that you had to, is it some type of like app or, I don't know the term, but like plug in for a website that you used, or was it something that you had built specifically for your website? Is it something that like, in theory, someone could do across states if they had the right people knowing which bills are able to be plugged in, or is it something way more complicated than that?
For the live feed, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a subscription service that's piloting, I think, in Rhode Island and Massachusetts right now, and it costs $500 a year to have that live feed. And then we have a council member who sifts through and finds the bills that are about food systems in particular and divides those into the 5 integrated focus areas on a weekly basis. So once a bill is selected and put into one of those categories, then it's live updated. And I don't have the name of that service that we subscribe to because the council member actually subscribed to it directly as an individual, but I can get that to you.
That'd be great to know. Thanks, Nessa. So one of the things that we ran across and feel like it's a giant undertaking, but Canada has a report on their province legislation, and I'm going to chat a link in the chat box. They did a research project to look at different areas of the food system and legislation related to those different areas and produce these reports that go along with it to document what's happening in the provinces. Now, mind you, Canada has like a third of the number of states that our provinces that the US has, but it was an interesting kind of overview of what was happening across the country in terms of food systems work. So this was one idea we were thinking about as kind of a larger undertaking of what legislation exists. Another thought was around kind of picking 4 areas of the food system and kind of doing a trend analysis of what legislation has been passed across the states in these four issue areas of the food system that may not have an existing national database where you can go and look up legislation. We also might be overthinking this, but we were trying to figure out kind of, is there an area that we could possibly add to in terms of understanding what's happening across states and, in terms of food systems legislation. So those were a couple of ideas that we had been batting around.
This is Emily. I don't know exactly what these priority areas are that you've identified, but one of, is someone who's been in and out of the food policy world in Ohio for the past 15 or so years. The recurring theme is always around distribution and processing infrastructure. So, I think we see, a lot of legislation in the areas of farm to school and farmland preservation and healthy food access, but I'm certainly not aware of a lot of resources around what's happening with distribution and processing infrastructure.
And we have not decided on topic areas. I mean, part of that is kind of what would be most interest to you all, to other state councils, and processing and distribution is a great example of that.
This is Jody. I would just say, you know, coming from a state where very little stock in sort of grassroots is, so I guess from my perspective, having something that sort of summarizes the activity across the nation, and that we're not just sort of making this up in Indiana, that this is happening everywhere, would be really helpful. And something that's also talks about the outcomes of anything that's been passed and the impacts it's had for, you know, the citizens of those states. Would be really helpful.
Thanks, Jody. I said on mute that that's only a very small undertaking. Other ideas or suggestions, thoughts? All right, folks. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Rachel's been taking copious notes, and so we'll share the notes with the group. If there's any other resources, any summary briefs, any outreach materials related to state legislation that passed in your states, if you want to share it with others on this group, you can either email the listserv or send them to us, and we'll put them in the Google folder, and that's accessible to everyone that's on within the State Food Policy Council list. We're trying to do these calls quarterly. We have not set a date for the next one. There was some talk and interest about the role of extension in councils that came up on one of our calls kind of earlier this year. And so we think we'll kind of look into that as a topic of discussion for this group on an upcoming call. If there are other topics of interest that you would like to have or discuss with other groups or other state groups, let us know. And we're happy to set up the space to have a conversation about that topic of interest. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments, we'll see you in a couple months.
Hold on, I have a question.
Yeah.
Real quick while everyone's here. I'm very, very curious if any state has a set of educational standards around food. So we have educational standards for science and chemistry and math and for every grade level, for all these different grade levels. But I'm wondering if there's any state who has state standards for food that's not facts, family and consumer science, that's really modern education around our food system.
That's such a great question. This is Megan. In my mind, I imagine Vermont or California. Peter, does California have anything?
I don't know if I'm muted.
You're unmuted.
Muted, okay. No, California doesn't have anything. I could not imagine our legislature agreeing on what is good and healthy food at this point.
What about Vermont?
this is-
Vermont on the call?
Vermont is not on the call.
This is Martin from Kentucky. Yeah, I wouldn't say that we have state standards, but the state farm to school program is coordinated by the Department of Agriculture. We're meeting here this fall, I think, to develop curriculum standards to incorporate with farm to school programs. You know, the 3 C's. What is it? Classroom, cafeteria, and community. But so working on some kind of unified curriculum.
And that's in development, Martin?
It is, at least the idea is in development. I think that's what KDA is trying to pull together folks for a meeting to kind of, yeah, like what would it look like and what would the components be of that.
Great. Would you, it's probably going to take a while to develop, but it would be great to hear progress about it.
Yeah, okay, I'll try to. I'll try to be on these calls, or someone on my staff will try to be on these calls. I don't think we participated very much. My apologies.
No, we're delighted that you're here. All right, Jody, it sounds like you've got a new challenge.
Well, I feel like it would, I'm watching my daughter go through the FACS curriculum. It's really dated. And I'm just keep thinking, gosh, if there were just state standards, every single teacher would have to engage in this, or, you know, every teacher who it's relevant to. And because the food system is so across disciplines, that it could be really broad in terms of, and something for every grade level. Because if what we now know, we have a whole populace who has very little knowledge of food. So
We are centered,
yes.
developed, our center, do you know Food Span?
Yeah. I try and tell everyone I know about it. In fact, the food, I love the Food Span curriculum. So, and I was just going to write to those guys about how we're going to use it, but we have something called Integrated Program in the Environment, and every year they bring high school environmental science teachers in. And so this year I'm hoping they'll introduce that curriculum to all those environmental science teachers so that they can start integrating food system education into at least the environmental science program. It seems to be where it sort of ends up these days.
It did, this was a couple of years ago, but we had a meeting in Virginia that was talking about, at least in rural areas, it was a concern that they were cutting funding for 4-H and ag programs. So it's, you know, that's, well, there's not standards, there's also cuts being made to 4-H programs. And so how do we continue to develop or make funding available for these programs that did once exist, and still there's a shell of them to support them too.
Well, I've got an ag teacher here in rural county who's raising food and selling it, you know, into the local grocery store as well as the school, and, you know, funding his program.
Cool. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, maybe he can join that Kentucky conversation. That would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We thank you for joining us. Thanks for making the time this afternoon. We'll send out a doodle poll or a when to meet to find another time for the next call. And any topic suggestions, discussion, let us know. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.